This edition of Monocle on Saturday was first broadcast on the 31st of August 2024. Hello, I'm Georgina Godwin, broadcasting to you live from Midori House in London. This is Monocle on Saturday. Coming up on today's programme, we'll have a look through the week's news and culture with the author and political journalist Terry Stiastny. Plus, we'll find out more about the new book-swapping platform that benefits indie bookshops and authors. That's ahead here on Monocle on Saturday. First, though, here's the news. The commander of Ukraine's Air Force has been fired by President Volodymyr Zelensky after one of the country's valuable new F-16 fighter jets crashed, killing the pilot, reportedly due to friendly fire. Zelensky said it was his responsibility to take care of all of our warriors. The far-right alternative for Germany is predicted to come first in at least one of two elections in eastern states on Sunday, piling pressure on Chancellor Olaf Scholz's federal coalition over the economy, immigration and support for Ukraine. The AfD is unlikely to be able to form a state government, even if it does win, as it's polling short of a majority and other parties refuse to collaborate with it. And the weight loss drug Ozempic may be able to slow biological ageing. The drug contains the active ingredient semaglutide used to treat type 2 diabetes and obesity. But experts now believe it can do more, including being able to reverse kidney disease, prevent heart failure, reduce previously untreatable high blood pressure, and cut the risk of dying from coronavirus by a third. And that's your Monocle Radio News. Hello and welcome to Monocle on Saturday. I'm joined now in the studio by the author and political journalist Terry Stiastny. Good morning to you, Terry.
Good morning.
You're looking wonderfully bronzed. You've just come back from holiday, I gather.
Yes, I've been in France for a couple of weeks, so yes, it was lovely. Now getting back into all the sort of back to school, everything seems to start up again next week. So
absolutely. Yeah. And of course, the thing about coming back from holiday, not that it's happened to you, is that one sometimes comes back just that little bit more round.
No, I think that has happened. I'm pretty much 90% croissants, cheese and wine at this point.
Well, fortunately, as we've just heard,
we have found the fountain of youth. If you open the British papers this morning, it's amazing. According to the Daily Telegraph, it's saying Ozempic is hailed as the fountain of youth. The Daily Express, again, is weight loss drug the secret to fountain of youth? And the Times looks at it a little bit more soberly, saying weight loss drugs curb the effects of getting old. But they are all essentially reporting on the same thing, which is some findings which the European Society of Cardiology has looked at the effects of Ozempic or Wegovy, semaglutide, basically the active thing. And they are suggesting that not only does it help people to lose weight, and in British politics over the last few weeks, we've had Conservative leadership candidates saying, who's been on Ozempic, who's tried it, who's lost weight, why are people suddenly looking so thin? That this could also have much bigger health benefits. So it cuts levels of inflammation in the body. And it seems to suggest from some of these trials that, as we were just hearing, this could, reduce inflammation, prevent heart failure, reduce high blood pressure, and have sort of so many unexpected beneficial effects. So it's not quite clear whether it's just because you lose weight, then, everything else starts to function a bit better, or whether it's actually reducing the inflammation that helps sort of get rid of all these problems right at the source. I
mean, before you rush to book your doctor's appointment, though, the side effects. Breathing problems or wheezing, this is from the internet, it could be, but it is from WebMD, which is meant to be, racing heart, fever or general ill feeling, swollen lymph nodes, swelling of the face, lips, mouth, tongue or throat, trouble swallowing or throat tightness, itching, skin rash or pale red bumps on the skin called hives, nausea or vomiting, and then, of course, there's Ozempic face, which basically, when you lose all the fat on your face, you just look look hollowed out and ancient.
So yes, well, I think it's every fairy tale, if you or myth, if you find the fountain of youth, there's always some downside to it, isn't there?
You may feel 19, but you'll look 90.
Yeah, that's the question. I mean, nausea and vomiting, 9-fold increase in pancreatitis, it says. You can get something called stomach paralysis. So obviously, if it works well for people, then that's fantastic. But obviously, it's not necessarily something for everybody. And I think, in the British context particularly, people are now suggesting, well, should the NHS be providing this free for people? It costs about £200 a month in the UK if you get it privately. And basically, there doesn't seem to be enough to go round for all the people that might need to be treated because they have diabetes or severe obesity. But if people are saying, well, should we prescribe this for everybody? What would the cost of that be? And presumably at some point in the future, these things will get cheaper. But what are the risks? What are the benefits? And what are the costs with any sort of potential wonder drug?
Yeah, of course, this has caused an absolute storm on social media. Lots of people taking to X to talk about it, except in Brazil, where X is banned.
Well, yes, as of, I think, yesterday. And there's, been a sudden surge in people signing up to other social media platforms. They've seen loads of Brazilian people suddenly joining this because they can't now go on X. So Elon Musk, obviously very prone to falling out with people. He has been, the Brazilian Supreme Court has ordered, The Guardian is reporting here, that X be suspended because the social media platform failed to meet a deadline to appoint a legal representative. And this apparently is a dispute which has been going on between the judge of the Supreme Court and Elon Musk since April. And the root cause of it really is that Brazil said, look, you need to stop people posting effectively what they believe is disinformation and what they call digital militias who backed Jair Bolsonaro and his attempts to stay in power after his election defeat. Musk said he wasn't going to do this, and now they said, well, you need to have a legal representative and you need to accept Brazilian law. Otherwise, we're going to close you down and tell all the telecom companies to close you down. And so they have done that.
And in terms of how it works, they can't just say, OK, Twitter's banned. They do have to go to all of the broadband or the
sort of internet providers basically say, or other telephone companies and say, no, you can't allow this to be. And as you'd expect, Elon Musk is not very happy about this. And I'm trying to find where he said, it said he would not comply with the judge's illegal orders to censor his political opponents, and so they're basically saying no. We are going to defy this order. But if the mediators are going to block it and the courts are going to block it, there doesn't seem to be an enormous amount that they could do about it.
Musk himself is obviously becoming increasingly more right wing. It would appear on his platform, and also very vocal in his support for Donald Trump.
Yes, I mean, this is, the interesting thing. I mean, I think we also saw in the UK a surge of people going to other social media after Elon Musk was tweeting, for want of, Xing, things about the recent riots. He was saying things like civil war is inevitable in Britain, and people did feel that, untrue posts on social media were at the root cause of some of those riots. But, he obviously feels that this is a freedom of speech issue and that people should be allowed to say whatever they want, and whatever the consequences. Whereas, in many, many countries, the law says, well, you haven't got the freedom to shout fire in a Grand Theatre effectively. And, people are trying to restrict that.
But it is alarming how he is swinging to the right, as are parts of Germany. Let's have a look at the election, the state vote that's happening tomorrow.
Yes, and it's interesting, again, we were talking about the riots that we saw in the UK in the summer, and many people, there was false news, fake news going around that there had been a killing which had not been done by somebody who was an asylum seeker or a recent immigrant. In Germany, they've recently had the attacks in Solingen where people were stabbed, and that was by someone who had come to Germany as an asylum seeker. And Germany is now ahead of these elections in Saxony and Thuringia, is saying we are going to send 28 convicted criminals who had come from Afghanistan back to Afghanistan. And this is being widely seen in the Süddeutsche Zeitung here as a sign ahead of the elections that Germany feels that there is, an issue here to do with people's perception of asylum seekers. And so, the German government saying, well, no, if you come to Germany and commit crimes in Germany, then you will be sent back to wherever you came from, regardless of the situation there. And this sending people to Afghanistan has had to be negotiated via discussions in Qatar, because Germany doesn't want to talk to the Taliban directly. But yeah, people are reporting here this is seen as very much a symbolic gesture to try to say to people who might be tempted to vote for the AfD that, who are of course very anti-immigrant, that, the government is taking some of these issues seriously.
Some people, of course, will vote for the AfD. They're doing very well in some states.
Yes, they've all have for a long time been particularly strong in the East, and they have been strong in those regions. And, they have the AfD themselves have been pretty critical of the government in this issue. They say, oh, well, this is just all panic PR, and that they say that other parties are responsible for what they call the migration disaster. But, opinion polls suggesting that the AfD is in second place in Saxony with 30% of the vote. So, on Sunday they could still do quite well. Yeah.
I see even things like there's a supermarket in Germany that's got publicity up in its stores saying don't vote for the AfD.
Yes. Yeah. No, I think, people are very concerned about how much. The reporting in the Times here this morning that the AfD is currently being monitored by Germany's domestic intelligence agency as a suspected right-wing extremist organisation, which is, pretty unusual for a political party.
Absolutely. Let's go to Japan now and talk about the recruitment crisis for the military and what they're doing to allay that.
Well, yes, we are constantly reading stories about Japan, about the effects of the declining birth rate in the country and the way the country is trying to deal with the issues that causes, the way they're trying to encourage people to have more children. There's so many unexpected consequences of this. And as the Financial Times is reporting this morning, one of the things is hard to get people to want to join the military. So they are saying Japan is now wooing potential military recruits with bigger stakes and better beds, because they're saying that people sort of think, well, I don't want to join the Japanese army. It's not very nice. It's not very well paid. They're saying, get better paid in the private sector. So they're saying we will provide better showers and toilets, greater privacy in sleeping quarters, individual capsule-style sleeping rooms on naval vessels. And apparently the recruitment campaign in the past year has focused on the size and quality of steaks served at army bases. So they're saying, join the army and have a nice steak. But also, obviously, there's a military issue here as well, and Japan is worried about the potential threat from China, and suddenly thinking, well, if we can't get anybody to actually join the military and we've got fewer people to choose from, then we've got to try and do something about it.
Absolutely. And of course, this is all linked also to the very low birth rate.
Yes, the birth rate, despite all the best efforts by trying to encourage people, the 5.7% year-on-year drop in the number of babies born to Japanese nationals. And it says that annual number of births in Japan is on course to fall below 700,000 this year for the first time since records began. So this seems to be, a continuing problem for the next few years.
Yeah. Now, Terry, when we were sitting in our lovely kitchen just before we came on air, you groaned because you'd had an email telling you that there was another round of edits to do on your book. Tell us more about your book.
Well, my lovely editor is very encouraging. I am working on a book because it's very interesting that we've been talking about fake news and disinformation in the modern context. So the book that I'm working on, which is going to be called Believable Lies, is about fake news during the Second World War, and it's about how the British government used radio stations which broadcast deliberately fake news into occupied Europe to try to undermine the morale of the enemy. And they believed, it's same thing, different era, and obviously different technology, that you could spread rumours and you could discuss, get people discussing things that their governments didn't necessarily want them to talk about. And they believe that would undermine enemy morale. But this was a huge political row within the country itself, because a lot of people argued that actually, no, this undermines trust and actually we shouldn't be doing it. And it's really about all the people who were involved in creating these radio stations and how they got on with each other and how they mostly fell out with each other.
That sounds absolutely fascinating. Who's publishing it?
It's going to be published by W.H. Allen and hopefully in April next year.
Right. Well, now that's one book that certainly is not going to be on the second-hand market anytime soon because, of course, it hasn't even come out yet. But we are going to talk now about books that are, well, recycled. So Bookloop by bookshop.org is a new service that allows anyone to swap their books for credit to spend online, with indie bookshops and authors benefiting from the transaction. So joining us now to tell us more is bookshop.org's partnership manager, Mark Thornton. Good morning to you, Mark.
Morning to you.
Tell us about Bookloop.
So Bookloop is very simple. If you've got books that you have read and enjoyed but no longer need, you can go onto the Bookloop portal, scan them, have an offer made, have those books collected, and then providing those books are in good order and are in the box, you will then receive credit on bookshop.org to spend in return for new books. And of course, every sale on bookshop.org benefits independent bookshops. And the twit. Sorry. So,
tell us more about bookshop.org and just how that works. We've talked about it on this programme before, but I think it's an absolute genius organisation. So just explain how it works.
Thank you very well. It's very kind of you to say so. So it's an e-commerce platform. So bookshop.org. Founded in 2020, we're a certified B Corp, and our mission is just to support independent bookshops. And how we do that is, if you are a physical independent bookshop, when you sell books on bookshop.org, you get 30% commission. We do all the shipping and sending out the books. So as far as the consumer is concerned, they're getting the great selection and quick delivery that they expect from other e-commerce platforms. But in this instance, independent bookshops get a sort of an industry-leading commission on that. But the twist, if you like, is that anyone can sell books. So, people can set up if they are authors or publishers or influencers. We have teachers and schools. And every single sale of a book through their links and through their affiliate accounts not only earn commission for them, but an additional amount of commission, 10% of every sale goes into a shared pool. And that shared pool is shared between all of the bookshops on bookshop.org, which there are now nearly 600. So it's a kind of a win-win situation where every single sale on bookshop.org benefits a bookshop in some way. And
so anybody can become an affiliate, a partner?
That's correct.
How does that work? They have their own page on there?
Yeah, they set up what looks to be an online bookshop so they can curate. So the sort of central core element, if you like, of bookshop.org is the list. So, I was an independent bookseller for 11 years before I joined bookshop.org. And one of the most amazing things when you run a bookshop is someone comes in and says, I really love, sort of Scandi crime or romance novels. And you would sort of pick a few books off the shelf and put them down in a stack. And you let the reader, the customer, choose the books that they want to read from that kind of curated selection. And on bookshop.org, anybody can curate those lists. So they can, pick the favorite books that they like or the genres that they like. And so it's a bit like, you can, without being disrespectful to booksellers, anybody can play at being a bookshop and doing that curation. And we've seen, some amazing lists and some amazing affiliates who've sort of grown up. But it's not just sort of individuals or, we've seen teachers, we've seen schools, we have affiliate partners, very big affiliate partners like the Hay Festival, the Booker Prize. And of course, these are big organizations, and all of those sales are benefiting independent bookshops. So it's a really vibrant place. And bookshops are benefiting.
Absolutely. So now tell us about your sort of move into the whole circular economy.
Yeah, so this was something. So bookshop.org was set up really, if we strip it right back to basics, the best way to support an independent bookshop is to go into those fantastic spaces and browse. And that's what we always say. Of course, we live in a world now where something like 60% of book sales across all formats now happen online. So bookshop.org was set up to give booksellers the tools and support to be able to compete in that space. And of course, it's no accident that over the last few years, there's been this big growth in the sort of, resale, and particularly amongst fashion, Vinted and people like that. And this idea of the sort of circular economy. And I think what we did was to go in and say, okay, if this is a growing area of book sales, bookshops are being impacted by this. So how can we help them be part of that circular economy? And so what we did was, on the one hand, was to say, okay, so if you get money for selling books, which there are other resale platforms, on the internet, but if you resell books here, the credit you get has to be spent and help independent bookshops. But I guess the twist that we really wanted to do was to say, could authors benefit as well? Could we take in the same way that we do a sort of shared pool with the independent bookshops with sales? Could we take a small part of the book sales that occur, the secondhand book sales that occur, and actually make sure that authors benefit as well? Because there's no secret that author earnings have collapsed. And authors are impacted by all the changes of how people buy and sell things on the internet. So it was our way of sort of coming in with our sort of overview with that affiliate network to actually help independents be part of that economy and sort of in a way that's kind of beneficial to them and supports their physical bookshops remaining open.
So walk me through it. If I've got a book and I no longer need it, what's the process? How easy is this?
It's really, really easy. So you go to if you go to bookshop.org, there's a link to Bookloop, a very prominent link in the nav. You go to the Bookloop portal. So sorry, I'm just reaching it off my shelf here. So let's say I no longer want Tim Harford's book, which isn't going to happen. It's a brilliant book. So I go into the portal, I scan it, and the partner we're working with, which is a company called Circle, who work across Europe and work with some of the biggest retailers in Europe to do similar schemes. They maintain a list of prices of resale prices of books, because you can imagine that what it's like when a book, when there's a huge bestseller book, particularly around Christmas, come January, there may not be a market for that book. So the first thing will be that it may not be that, when you scan your book, there may not be a market for that. But we anticipate that the majority of books, there will be a market for it. So you scan it in and you will be offered a price and you accept that price and you just keep scanning the books until you've reached a certain threshold of that will allow you to send those books back. So there's two thresholds. One is, I think it's, forgive me, I should have these seared into my brain, but I think it's £5 in terms of the resale value. At that moment, you can put all those books in a box. You accept the offer, you print out a label, you slap it on the box, and you take it to a DPD collection point. But if you hit a higher level, I think it's about £20, you can get that box collected from your house. And at that point, DPD will come, collect that box, and a few days later, the credit will appear on your bookshop.org account. So if you've got a bookshop.org account, it will appear automatically. If you don't, you will then be invited to set up an account. And it's really as simple as that.
And then you buy more books from there, and so on and so on and so on.
And then you buy more books, and that's the loop. That's the loop part.
Yeah, fantastic idea. So that's Bookloop, and people can find it on bookshop.org.
Yeah, just go to the bookshop.org and follow the link to and of course we have an excellent customer support team if you've got any questions or have any issues. But the response has been fantastic. We've had some really, really great response, not just from people who like what we're trying to do on behalf of independent bookshops, but also amongst the author community. Because as we've worked with the Society of Authors to put this in place, and I think Anna Ganley, who's the CEO of Society of Authors, just said it's a really thoughtful, mindful way of trying to help more people benefit. So we'll see how it goes.
Mark Thornton, thank you very much indeed. Terry, that's absolutely fascinating. And the fact that it helps authors. I mean, that this whole thing of author earnings, it is pretty woeful, isn't it?
Yes, I think it is. And I think most authors would say, this is not something that you necessarily go into thinking you're going to be, a bestseller and, have lots of money and film rights coming in. I think people have that illusion and then it goes very, very quickly. But I can see this could help lots of ways around. It could help with all the piles of books that are currently all over my floor, partly from research and partly from other things I've been reading. So the idea of sort of selling some of those back and helping keep independent bookshops and helping other authors at the same time, sounds like a good plan.
And just going back to Believable Lies, your latest book, which isn't out yet, when does it come out?
It should be out, hopefully, all things being well, in April next year.
Oh, so it is a long process, and I hadn't realised this. My brother Peter is a writer, and his most recent book comes out on the 12th of September. It's called Exit Wounds, but we together have been working on this for so long. It's a really long process,
It's an incredibly long process. I mean, this is a book which is about the Second World War, and I started to joke to people that from the original idea to it actually coming out will have taken, almost as long as the Second World War. So.
Extraordinary. I think while we're talking about books, let me just tell you about the current episode of Meet the Writers. It's with Nathan Thrall, and he won a Pulitzer for his book A Day in the Life of Abed Salama, I beg your pardon. And it's about a tragedy, a bus crash that takes place in the West Bank, in the occupied West Bank. And all these little children are on the bus, including Abed's son. And then what Thrall does, absolutely brilliant. He's a Jewish American who lives in Jerusalem. He then just follows so many of the people that were impacted during that tragedy. But the outcome is that you get this incredibly forensic examination of what it's like to live in the West Bank. And I just feel at this time it's such a necessary book. So that's the current episode. But of course, a new episode goes out every Sunday at noon. And so tomorrow it's wonderful Magda Szubanski. This is part of an Australian series that I recorded when I was there earlier this year. So she is an Australian comedy actress. She's known as also an LGBT rights advocate. She was in Kath and Kim. She played Sharon in that. She was in the films Babe and Babe, Pig in the City. She's the farmer's wife in those films. Also Happy Feet and Happy Feet 2. But she's got a wonderful autobiography called Reckoning, which is all about her father, who was Polish. She didn't really know much about that, and just sort of talks about her life in a wonderful way. I think, though, my favourite book of hers is Timmy the Ticked-Off Pony. He's a pony who's very cross about a great deal, and it's a really very funny book. With your book, Believable Lies, though, you must have had to have done so much reading.
Yes, there's a lot of been a lot of work in archives, a lot of original research, archives all around the country, mostly in the UK, and unbelievably, I mean, there are still things which are not made public. There are still documents from wartime era, which in the UK you have to request under freedom of information because they have been kept secret for so long. And, anything that involves sort of the secret services or anything like that, there is so much that is still covered in secrecy, which I found really surprising at this distance from those events.
That's extraordinary. So, I mean, are you allowed to view those documents?
Yes, I mean, mostly, well, you can see where the gaps are. That you open a file and it will say, this is held back till 2020 or something, and sometimes the documents haven't been put back, so you have to go and say, where are these sheets of paper, please, and can I see them? And which gets referred to the Foreign Office, and they decide whether you can get to see them or not. So,
extraordinary. Very odd. Well, right after this programme, I've got to go and prepare. I'm doing an event at Queen's Park Book Festival this afternoon with Amna Modin, who's a Guardian journalist, and she's written a book called Scattered, The Making and Unmaking of a Refugee, and it's all about Somalia. Fascinating about the history of Somalia and the conflict, and but also just about how beautiful places like Mogadishu are, and actually how some people are choosing to go back and live there. It's quite extraordinary. Anyway, so that's all coming up, and do listen out for Magda on Meet the Writers tomorrow. Terry Stiasny, author of the soon-to-come book, Believable Lies. Thank you very much for being with me today. And also, of course, thanks to our producer and studio engineer, Mariella Bevan. Thanks also to Mark Thornton. Bookshop.org and Book Loop are the things he was talking about. And this programme, Monocle on Saturday, will return at the same time next weekend. I'm Georgina Godwin. Thank you for listening.